Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Just concluded watching the Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa press conference. And yeah, let's talk about it. Initially, I thought it was going well. I thought, yeah, this is going well. President Ramaphosa's strategy is working. There was a warm reception. Everything was jovial at the beginning. I was concerned about the people in the room, Vance, Elon Musk, Peter, Seth, those type of guys. I was like, okay, these people are hostile to the South African cause. These people are going to be giving a tough time. Elon being in the room in particular was something that was worrying me because Elon at some point had Grok manipulated. There was a statement from XAI saying that Grok had been tampered with to start answering most and all questions which it was being asked to speak about genocide in South Africa. Previously, Grok would actually give you the actual information such as in 2020, there were 21,325 murders in South Africa. Only 110 occurred on farms. And of those murders which occurred on farms, the 110, that included on small holding farms, which are predominantly black-owned, on commercial farms, and very few of them actually involved anybody who is a farmer, because they are farm workers on farms. They are farm dwellers, the relatives of those farm workers, and then they are farm owners. So Grok used to tell you that. Grok doesn't tell you that anymore. So it was worrying to see him there because he's also been saying that the only reason why Starlink is not operating in South Africa is because he is not black. And that's not true. He withdrew his Starlink application at the end of January from ICASA. And ICASA has a regulation that stipulates that you need to have a 30% local ownership model. That doesn't necessarily mean the local ownership is going to be of all of your assets, all of Starlink. It basically means that the South African version, which may have a share of the global version, has to have local ownership. That's because you're going to be, taking money from the South African consumers, and all of that money is being externalized. And you're going to be also affecting and taking business away from local businesses. So localization, in terms of having shared ownership of such a big sector of the economy, such as telecommunications and internet, you do need some local ownership if there's going to be a benefit to that particular country. Otherwise, a lot of those resources will be externalized. So Elon could always open Starlink in South Africa. He could have structured it in such a way that, it would have made sense for his international business while giving South Africans a share of that and giving them share ownership, also getting them expertise. So that was never true. But his presence in the room was worrying me because I was like, okay, where's this going to go? But I thought it was going well up until this point. Up until this point.
Was that a question or a statement? Since this guy's never changed.
Seek for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa.
Well, I can answer that for President. For him, no,
I'd rather have him answer.
yeah, I don't answer. It will be.
The president will respond to you.
It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have talks between us around a quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
But Mr. President, I must
President
say that
Trump.
we have wait. We have thousands of stories talking about it,
Sure.
and we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that is Natalie here. Somebody here to turn that. I could show you a couple of things, and I have to. It has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
We have. Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down. Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you, Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care if you can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yeah. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. Honorable. Yes,
So these words, this meeting is going to be scrutinized for a very long time. And I'm happy that this part of it was actually televised and questions were being asked. I wish that Rupert would answer more questions to local media. The fact that he's even in the White House in and of itself shows that he has massive power and influence globally and in South Africa. I wish he would be able to speak to South African media, but he owns a lot of South African media, so journalists are afraid to speak to him. But at least at that moment, some questions were taken and we know some of his perspectives as well. So this will be discussed for a long time. These are my initial impressions. I'll probably return to this and look at the whole thing and anything that comes out after the, private meeting and any statements that come out are held. But going into this, President Ramaphosa clearly had a strategy. He was going to be calm. They were going to talk about golf. He's going to bring the golf gifts. He's going to let John Steenhuisen and Johan Rupert deal with the issues of the farm murders. Let the golfers deal with the issues of the farm murders. NELs, Ritif Goosen deal with those issues. And that was his plan. And then also to get a commitment from Trump that he's going to come to G20. So when he answered that question and Trump was like, holding back, and then Trump said, hold on. I was like, ooh, I don't think the strategy is going as per advertised. It was not anything like what happened with Zelensky. Mr. Ramaphosa is not the type of guy who will have a Zelensky moment with Trump, and it wouldn't even have worked. What do you achieve? It just gets worse, right? But I'm not particularly persuaded that this was good, and I'm going to try to break down why I'm saying that. I think it may end up being good, but the cost of a restoration of relations is going to be basically a reversal of most of the things that President Ramaphosa was signing. And that in and of itself is a serious question around, the state of democracy, right? And the health of a democracy if you can go somewhere else and then have to freeze a lot of your laws. But let's go through why I'm saying what I'm saying. So he was calm and he was going to let those other people talk. But you must recognize Trump had his own strategy, right? His strategy was like, when we get to a particular moment in the meeting, we're going to play the clips of Julius Malema. I'm going to have him account and explain why this dude is not arrested. So that was his strategy, right? And I'm going to remain aloof. I'm going to see what they're going to offer me behind closed doors. That was his strategy. But he was going to push. He was going to actually raise the issue and get witness testimony from the room. That witness testimony, I don't think went exactly as planned, right? So he gave the articles, he gave the video. So he's not convinced that he is wrong about the issues in America. In South Africa. He believes that he has been accurately informed. The articles are all factual and representative of the status of how white South African farmers are being treated in South Africa. And also, he's got the video clips of Malema. So that was Trump's strategy, and he executed his strategy, right? I'm going to be friendly. I'm not taking the bait on Israel. I'm not going to talk about the ICJ. I'm just going to focus on the farmers and that discussion. So that Trump executed his strategy, right? And he was friendly. He didn't come there, you don't have the cards, etc., etc. He came not in a Zelensky mode of a meeting. But there were other people in the room as well who had strategies. Johan Rupert had a strategy as well. His strategy, from what I'm reading, is number one, he wants to kill Land Expropriation Act. You don't have to kill the act to kill the act. What you need to do is to make sure that it becomes a worthless piece of paper that no one is going to action. I think he achieved that. Number two, he actually also wanted to make sure that he attacks Malema and also uses that to buffer himself from criticism. He doesn't like criticism. He doesn't like being challenged as the richest man in South Africa. He doesn't like being challenged for his control in the economy. He doesn't like being challenged for the impact that his family's products, alcohol and cigarette, had in the economy. Now what he can say is any kind of criticism of that nature is Julius Malema-sponsored criticism. So he's achieved that. So kill the Land Act, also kill any criticism of himself, his businesses, and his empire. Number 3, to then also offer a deal for Elon as a solution to South Africa's crime, to say, we need your help. Please, can we get some drones? Can we get Elon's Starlink at every police station? That's a massive tender if President Ramaphosa agrees to it. So number 1, the Minister of Communications makes a deviation for Elon. So Elon doesn't have to comply. That's how it would work. Doesn't have to comply with the ICASA regulation. Starlink then gets its license. Starlink is already ready to go. They've launched in Lesotho. They've launched in Zimbabwe. They've launched in a bunch of other African countries. They could start tomorrow. And in fact, a lot of people have already bought those things anyway and just go into Lesotho to try to keep it current so that they look like they're roaming, as opposed to just using it on their farms, etc., etc. And farmers are a large target market for Elon Musk. He knows that there's about 40,000 customers ready to buy those Starlink because there's 40,000 commercial farms. But obviously, he'll have more customers than the 40,000. But Rupert's strategy was like, this is the deal we're going to offer the Americans. Elon gets Starlink. He gets 40,000 farm customers. He gets every police station as a customer. Government tender, by the way, tenderpreneurship, the BEE that they say is bad. They're basically giving him a white economic WEE deal, or that's what Rupert is aiming for, right? And then he strengthens his relationship with Elon Musk. I think he executed his strategy, and he didn't. If you're looking at nuance, note that Rupert didn't refute the farm murder narrative. He said it's happening to everyone. So what he's saying when he says it's happening to everyone, and he may not have had space to actually, you can't really tell Trump that he doesn't know what he's talking about or he's wrong, to be quite honest, because that can also go its own way. And in front of all of the cameras, Trump doesn't like to feel embarrassed. And maybe he felt he was in a corner, and this is his friend, somebody he's played golf with. So he probably knows him better than most people. We don't know what they're going to say behind the scenes. But if they don't put up a fight, that becomes the narrative. That becomes like truth in a real sense. So this is also something that's concerning just about the way information, but let me focus. So he doesn't refute that. He simply says it's happening to everyone. So if I come and I say racists are stealing my phone, and you say they're also stealing the phones of the other people down the road, you are actually agreeing that it's racists who did it in having that kind of a conversation. So I don't think he dispels a key narrative about South Africa, which I think was important to dispel. I also don't think that Retief Goosen, the other guy who spoke, because he said, my family is living behind the fences. They've gone through these things. We've had these experiences. So he's also reinforcing the narrative. So when Trump is listening to his friend that he's played golf with, who he respects for winning the 2 titles, say, yeah, actually, you're right. Those articles that you're just giving to President Ramaphosa are right. And I think it looked off a little bit when President Ramaphosa was trying to like say, give me those cases. I want to figure out about these articles, and I want to figure out what's happening with the crosses, etc. 27,000 people were killed in South Africa last year. Less than 100 people, or less than 200 actually, last year's status numbers, whatever, data from Stats SA happened on farms, right? 27,200 on farms. Imagine if we put 27,000 crosses on the road as a representation of Black people dying in townships, etc. And Rupert did address that, right? To be fair to him, he did point out that there's a lot of people dying where John Steenhuisen is the leader. And I've been one of the people, when John used to bring up the farm murder narrative quite a bit, I would challenge him on social media and say, John, you guys run the Western Cape. There were 5,600 deaths in the Western Cape. Most of those deaths happened in Khayelitsha, in Langa, in the Cape Flats, in Delft, those kind of police stations, because when they report the crime stats, they also report the stations where the crimes are most prevalent. So to be fair to Rupert, he did also try to bring that about, but I don't think he unraveled the narrative. And I think in trying to propose a deal of that nature, it's something that is curious to me and requires everyone to think. The provision of internet in South Africa is a massive business. Rupert just made an offer, not President Ramaphosa. Rupert made an offer to Elon Musk that come to South Africa and help us with your internet. The same Elon Musk who was changing Grok to get the answer that he needed. There's a bit of a security risk there, and there's a bit of a democratic question. The security risk is, can Elon Musk be trusted to handle the internet provision when he is open to manipulating the companies that he controls and does not necessarily always act professionally in the provision of those services. So if he then decides, let's say there's another social media app that we then create because we're frustrated with X, let's call it Ubuntu Chat or whatever you call it, right? UB or whatever you call it. Let's say you don't call it Twitter, you call it Kuluma or whatever you call it, right? None of those names really are attractive. I don't think they would work if I was doing them as a business. But you get what I'm trying to say. What if that platform gets big in Africa? Elon can then say, no, this platform has got hate speech and ban it on his service providers, forcing us to stay on X. What's to stop him from doing that? I have a real concern about him because he changed Grok. He changed Grok. That's something that happened. And XAI issued a statement saying that the thing was manipulated. So just something to think about there. John also had his own strategy because John has been one of the people who was talking about farm murders, and he didn't necessarily refute the farm murder narrative if you were paying attention. He just said, yes, it is an issue, and then tried to expand the conversation a little bit. And he also attacked Malema and also tried to make this case, right? And Malema can defend himself, and I'm sure he will. But I'm just trying to point out to you what John's strategy was. John had a strategy there: kill the Expropriation Act, kill the Bella Act, put Ramaphosa in a corner where he realizes that he has to work and talk to me, and then also attack the EFF. He accomplished all of that. Right? As things stand right now, I think that the EFF is going to have a very difficult time because obviously Malema was in the room without being in the room. But at a point where now he has been globally demonized and thrown under the bus because it is a historic song. The local courts have ruled on it. And they've ruled on it and tried to go through pains of trying to illustrate why it's not literal. But at the same time, I haven't given my view on this song because my view is really a Christian view, and politics is not necessarily, driven by Christian values or whatever the case may be. But I'll give you my view now. I think the EFF should stop singing that song. There's a scripture. I'm not very good at reciting scriptures, and I didn't check it. I'm just speaking just off the cuff here. There's a scripture that says, your faith should not lead others to sin. Your faith should not lead others to sin, which is to say you can be very strong about an issue and a principle, but if your strength in that principle then takes people off the road, that principle in and of that action in and of itself may not be helpful, right? So I think that the song is a metaphorical song. It's not a literal song in the modern sense. I don't think that the people who are members of the party take it literally. I don't think that the song has contributed to criminality in South Africa. The song in and of itself, in the year 2007, right? Julius Malema wasn't a prominent politician. People were killed on farms at the same rate that they're being killed on farms now, right? So in 2010, Julius Malema wasn't a leader of the economic freedom fighters. People were still being killed on farms and other places because South Africa has a massive crime problem. So having said that, I still think that the song is not helpful. I don't think that the lifting of the apartheid flag was an act of just free speech. I did agree with the judgments that say that would be something that would be an act of hate speech. And I don't think that the singing of the song is the same. I think there is a nuance, but I don't think it's helpful, even if the courts have said it's okay to do in principle. And this view is driven by my faith. I'm a Christian. And at some point, Christianity, not at some point, the heart of it is love. It's about love, reaching out, loving the other person, and trying to build with the other person. Part of love is about fairness and justice. The same Christian value that I'm telling you now makes me hesitant to accept the land distribution patterns in South Africa as they are. When that guy was listening, was it a tax collector? Lazarus, was it on the tree? He was on the tree, he was listening to Jesus, and he was moved. And then he realized, it's so wrong for me to be holding on to all of this. I have been acting badly as a tax collector. And he gave away. He gave away because he understood. So you understand that my Christianity tells me, don't sing this song, because even though in principle you could be right, it's hurting people. And now it's even in the White House. And people are asking, why are you not arrested, etc., etc. At the same time, I don't think that saying, no, we're not going to give anyone land, or this is our land. And, ignoring the fact that the Land Act of 1913 happened, the Group Areas Act happened, the Glenn Gray Act of 1894 happened. Black people were dispossessed of land by legislation, land that they used to live on, land that they were developing, and now black people live on the periphery. They don't have commercial farms. They don't have access to that space. Yes, government owns some land. Yes, the Ingonyama Trust owns some land, but 70% of commercial farms are owned by Afrikaners. And many pieces of land were taken violently from people. So, in as much as I can see that this song is not helping, I can also see that there's something that goes against my values of love. Because how can you love somebody when you see them living in poverty, in squalor? How can you love somebody when you know that there was a philosophy of hate from 1948 up until 1994, which said that these people should not be given any education. These people should not be given access to professions. These people should be kicked. They should be downtrodden. People are being killed. And you benefit from that. And then when the whole thing is over, you act as if everything you got is just fair and square and there's no need to fix the issue. I don't think that Jesus would ever buy into that. Jesus came to set the captives free. He came to make sure that people have prosperity, have abundance. And he advocated for sharing. Jesus fed the 5,000. He fed them because he felt their hunger. There's no way that Jesus would look at the hungry in South Africa, the destitute 60%, and ignore that. Anyway, let's move on. So I think that the EFF now is going to be in a very tough position. I think they're going to get a lot of radical attention from people within the radical circles. But this meeting right here has made them global pariahs. It really has, especially as long as Trump is going to be in the administration. Because even in companies now, people will be looking for EFF supporters and trying to make sure they flush them out. Because they've been attacked by South Africa's richest man on the biggest stage in the White House. They've been attacked by John Steenhuisen. John Steenhuisen positions himself as the buffer between Mkhonto weSizwe, EFF, and the ANC. I'm the good guy. I'm the savior. Yes, something's happening on farms, Mr. Trump, but I'm the one who's preventing the worst outcomes. And I don't really think that MK would be pursuing anything to do with farm matters, and I really don't think EFF would either. But now he's achieved his outcome that he sought, John. Rupert has achieved his outcome. Trump has achieved his outcome. Did Mr. Ramaphosa achieve his outcome? Which is to get the truth told about South Africa, the conditions on South African farms, the conditions for white South Africans. I'm not sure. I'm not sure he did that. Now, can a deal be made still? I think so. Because I think we know what the deal looks like. It looks like Starlink gets approved. Then Donald Trump comes to the G20. And that can then be framed as a victory. Right? And then the GNU continues because Trump will then want to see Steenhuisen within the GNU being the buffer, because this is what was discussed in the White House in the meeting. So he had no choice but to take these people. I think a lot of these people are his people, but the interests of Adrian Gore, the interests of Rupert are different from the interests of an ANC supporter like Khumbudzo or member like Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. She has different views on NHI to Adrian Gore, right? So having these two conflicting sides in the room speaking to this power broker, Donald Trump, to negotiate a deal I think, was always going to have this type of an outcome. So just to conclude my initial impressions of all of this, I think this wasn't the worst case scenario. It wasn't a Zelensky moment. There were no Zelensky moments. I think Zelensky himself made a lot of mistakes. I do think letting the other people speak was in and of itself a mistake. I do think President Ramaphosa should have spoken throughout. I don't think that he should have tried to now say, where are these crosses, etc., there. I think just let Trump give his thing, because now you're making it seem like you don't know what's happening in the country either, right? I think maybe he could have committed to have increased policing, stuff that makes you look like, yeah, you are in control. But I think letting all the other people speak allowed for narratives to be reinforced. So in terms of this meeting, I think Elon is happy. I think the right wing in America, the MAGA base, is happy. I think that there are going to be mixed emotions on the flight home around whether or not all the other voices delivered. But I think Rupert also is happy. And John, I think, is happy as well, because his base was actually attacking him over the last few days, saying that you used to speak about farm matters. Now you're going to go and deny them at the White House. He was worried how that would look. So some of these things are being driven by the fact that people have different constituencies. And that's how they responded the way they responded. But this is going to be studied for quite a bit. I am a little bit disappointed because telling the truth is something that I think is important. I think it's important to tell the truth and shame the devil. But even if you don't believe in Christianity, truth should always be something that we all pursue, because we must act on what is true. And our basis of what is true should be driven by empirical data. It should be driven by a lot of things. I'm unhappy that the crime issue has been painted in a way that makes it seem as if there's a special type of crime issue that targets white South African farmers, when that's not the truth. And I'm worried that that will continue to lead to funny outcomes in the future. I'm not trying to diminish murder in saying what I've said. It's the worst crime. There's no crime worse than that. Taking a life that God gave, it's the worst crime. But at the same time, trying to fight for protection by using misleading narratives is also a form of manipulation. So how will the rest of Africa look at this? I think they'll look at this and say, well, Trump is willing to be magnanimous. Trump is willing to make a deal, and they'll potentially make deals with them. And Trump seemed to be very proud of what has happened in Rwanda and DRC, and his guys have been helping in that respect, in terms of, like, they did get them to sit down to a table and some deal has been formulated. At the same time, I think I saw some articles that someone was deported to Sudan from America. So Trump is definitely looking to make deals with Africa and go forward with Africans. So I think he may end up going to G20. But I'm a little bit worried now that the truth in and of itself, the academic, research-based, empirical truth, has been taken over by the version that right-wing MAGA base was pushing. I don't know what you think. Let's have a conversation in the comments. This is just initial impressions.